Well, I just wanted to talk now a little bit about bird feeders and why you should stop feeding birds past a certain time. And here you can see a robin, and it's actually picking up bits of peanut and seed which have fallen out of bird feeders. These are the same bird feeders I was showing in an early video, which were attracting wood mice. Now, the bird, you can see the robin here, it's foraging and it's taking peanuts because they're the easiest food to find. But robins are insectivorous birds normally, and they're actually foraging in the undergrowth for little insects and things like that, which they depend on. In winter we need to feed the birds, but the trouble is, after a certain while the birds become a bit too dependent on the feeders, and this interferes with their behaviour a bit. So what we need to do with the feeders is we have to start phasing them out before spring, because the danger is birds won't teach their young how to forage properly. And here's another problem with the feeders. If you have the feeders in an area for a long time, they attract rodents. I already mentioned wood mice, which aren't a big problem, but you do start to get brown rats like that one there. And so here, this is myself in the meadow with a scythe, and what I'm actually doing is I'm clearing away the old meadow, and if you listen as I'm doing this, you can actually hear birds starting to call. They get more and more excited, and all of the birds, all kinds of birds are interested in this, because you see there's insects for the insectivorous birds, and at the same time birds which like to feed on earthworms and things like that, they can get to the ground. But also the seed eaters. You see this meadow, there's still seeds in there, and the seed eaters would find it very hard to get in and find all the seeds. But as I cleared away the old meadow in preparation for making the new meadow, I was exposing lots of food, and you notice actually a lot of birds are starting to behave normally again, which is they're turning away from the feeders and they're starting to look for fresh food, and in the actual in the different habitats and ecosystems that are available to them. And in a garden you can have several, but in this case we have like a miniature meadow, so you can really hear the calls, and some of the birds are getting very excited and agitated, and crows were even flying down quite low to see what was there, and of course robins. Now at this point I'm just finishing half of it, and when I get to the other half I don't continue with the video, but when I actually had completed the work altogether, I looked over and I saw dozens of birds had already come down to this part here, which I've just cleaned. And so it gets more exciting, but also you're encouraging the birds to behave naturally. And if they're going to have youngsters, that's what you want. You don't want them, you don't want them dependent on seeds. Although the seed companies would be delighted if you spend, if you bought seeds and peanuts all year, that's great, because they're businesses. They don't necessarily have the best interests of the birds at heart. So they'd encourage you to keep buying seeds, and they'll tell you, they're right on the packets, that you should always feed the birds non-stop. But the truth is, it's a bad idea. Now you can see the first dandelions. There were actually dandelions in that meadow, and I left the flowers I cut above them. But here you can see a goldfinch, which was one of our most beautiful birds. The name isn't really a great name, because the bird isn't exactly golden. It does have golden primary feathers, which you can't really see here. But they love dandelions, and they love dandelion seeds, and this must be one of the first dandelion heads to have seeded this year. And they're in among vinca, vinca is a naturalized plant. Yeah, well, it's not. It's usually a garden plant, a climber, sort of a trailer. But very vinca is great for bees, as you probably saw in earlier videos. But you can see this little goldfinch is taking up loads of seeds, and they would much rather get fresh food than get older seeds from feeders. They actively like, hunting out their food. And this wasn't the only bird around, but this one is extremely beautiful. You can see, look how dedicated it is. It just crunches up the seeds and then it kind of lets go of the feathery bits, which are the flights. And of course, gardeners If you have dandelions, most of your dandelions are going to be eaten by these birds. If you're in the habit of destroying dandelions, you're actually taking away a lot of food from birds. And here you can a better view of him, and you can see the golden primary feathers there. But you can really see the goldfinch is an extremely beautiful bird. It probably deserves the name goldfinch because there isn't really a name that can really describe the beauty of this bird.